Hi everyone, my name is Soraya Letournel. I'm one of the top real estate agents right here on the Big Island, and I help sellers get the best price for their property, buyers relocate to the Big Island, and investors find the best deal out there. So today we're going to talk about a topic that I think a lot of people when they start their search kind of stumble upon, but it is a big piece of Hawaii real estate, and I think it would be very, very important to kind of go over the differences and what it means. So today we're going to go over leasehold versus fee simple, what it means, how will it affect you if you buy a leasehold property versus a fee simple properties, the intricacies of leasehold properties. And I personally own one, so I can tell you, what that's like and from firsthand experience. So most of the time people stumble into leasehold properties because they're looking at condos or sometimes homes, but most of the time the first people that contact me are typically looking at condos. So they'll be looking at condos, and in the same complex there could be, let's say, unit 31A, 31B. 31A will be in the 600, 31B will be in the 300s. They don't understand what the difference is between those two properties. And the big difference is that one of them is fee simple and the other one is leasehold. So what does it mean to actually have a leasehold property? Leasehold in essence means that someone else owns that land under the property. So if you're looking, let's say, at a farm and you found this beautiful home and it's for sale, someone else owns the land, and then you have a lease to use anything above that land. So it could be a house, it could be a farm, it could be a big production farm, or it could be a condo. And in essence, you have a lease to use that property for a certain amount of time, just as if you were a renter. You basically just use the property, you pay a lease fee for a certain amount of time, and this lease fee is renegotiated. So most of the time when you look at the text and information about the property, it will say renegotiation date, and that's a date where the lease fee is renegotiated, and it's typically every 10 years. Now that's not the end of the lease, it's just a date that they renegotiate that fee. The renegotiation fee typically goes up, it doesn't really go down, just like HOA fees, but it's limited as far as how far up it can go, just as if you were a tenant and there are tenant laws or rules that say that it can only go up a certain percentage. The same idea with the leasehold. You can only have so much percentage that it goes up to. Most of the time the lease is quite inexpensive. It'll be between $2,000 to $5,000 per year. Depends on the size of the property, of course, how many acres you have, or if it's just a little condo. All of that will be negotiated for you. If you have a condo, typically the HOA is the one who's acting on your behalf, who is negotiating with the lessor, and the lessor is the person who owns the land below the property that you're leasing. Oh yeah, so leasehold properties are very interesting because the terms of the lease are very loose depending on the type of property that you're buying. So if you're buying a condo, it's pretty much the same, like condo to condo. It'll be very, very much similar from one complex to the other, even though the lessor could be different. So it could be a big entity, it could be a family, or it could be a few individuals. It kind of depends, but overall the terms condo to condo are about the same. If you're looking at properties that are big farms, so like a house or with a big, orchard around it, or just an orchard, that's other types of property that I've seen as leasehold. The rules can change because there's a few more things that can play into it. And so when we were considering, we started a farm, when we considered starting a farm, we looked at a lot of leasehold properties. And what was very interesting reading through the contract is that some of the leasehold contracts would say, hey, whatever development you do on the property now becomes the property of the lessor. It is theirs now, any type of improvement that you make. So let's say you built a garage and the lease is over, that's their garage, you should leave it because it's a permanent structure. But what was interesting is that the trees are also considered a permanent structure in some of the contracts, and in others it's not. So it's kind of cool to see that if you are looking at farming and a lease, there are some contracts that will say you can literally take your trees and get out of here. And there's other ones that'll say your trees are my property now, and they stay on the property. So So that's just one little fun fact about, looking at leasehold. If you're thinking about developing land that's raw land, maybe look into that and see, where are you adding value, where do you have things that you should take with you, and things of that nature. So the main question I typically get after people understand the basics of leasehold is, all right, so let's say that I buy this leasehold property. What happens once the lease is over? There's two things that could happen. Number one is the lease is renewed. So that means that the person, the lessor, comes to an agreement with your attorney, and this has been typically negotiated 3 to 5 years prior to the end of the lease. And you have to renew the lease. One thing that I think people don't understand is that there's typically a fee that's associated with that. They won't do it for free. So you may have to pay $100,000 up to a couple $100,000 to renew the lease. Think of it as a deposit that is non-refundable. So that's a lease startup fee kind of. And then you would still renegotiate all of the yearly fees that you have to make as well, because then the contract is different. It's not like you're bound to where you were before and it has to be a certain amount of dollars up from the year prior. Now might be market rate. The second option that could happen is that the lessor says, hey, I actually want my property back and now please be gone. And you don't have tenant rules or tenant rights like you would if you were a tenant. Leasehold is pretty cut and dry. You need to exit and leave the property. And so when you're looking at condos, you will know a very long time ahead, right? You know what's coming. Most of the time you know within 5 years whether or not they're renewing the lease. So there's a couple condos that you'll see for sale along Elite Drive. Those may have 6 years to 16 years left. I only know of one complex that has until 2079 to use the property. That's the end of the lease. But when you're looking at farms, I've had a lot of people that live in leaseholds where the lease is getting to an end and they no longer can live where they live. So that's the type of property where it's more likely that the lessor will take back their property. So when the lease is over, you lose your equity. You're not owed anything. And so that's why a lot of people who are looking at leasehold properties really quickly decide, okay, that's not something for me because I've paid, let's say, $750,000 for this property, and in 15 years, I have nothing to show for it because the lease is over and I don't get my money back. It's gone. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, there are advantages to owning a leasehold. In my opinion, the people who should be looking at leaseholds either want to have an investment property and it's a cash cow. It's going to pay itself over and over. So those can be little condos that are on Elite Drive, or it can even be a big production farm as well. Some of those may have 50 years left. So think of it as this. This is a good example just to kind of help you mentally. Let's say you bought a condo on Elite Drive. Your neighbor has the exact same condo and they paid $600,000 for it. Maybe they have a mortgage or something like that. And then you have your unit that's next door, which let's say you paid $300,000 for. The gross income will be equivalent because it's basically the same unit. You're next door to each other. And if your lease is until 2079, which is the one that I own is until then, like for example, you make, let's say, $100,000 every year gross income. 3 years, it's paid for itself. And then you have still like 50 something years to make more money. So in a case like this, it kind of makes sense from an investor's standpoint to purchase a leasehold property. Sometimes some investors fight me on this and we can agree to disagree, depends how cheap it is, right? That's really what it boils down to. But sometimes it's true that you do lose all the appreciation because as you get closer to the end of the lease, your property loses value, right? Because as you're closer, you have less of an opportunity to make all of your money back. Versus if you have a much longer lease, there's ups and downs. Some of the condos that are on Elite Drive that have 16 years left are, in my opinion, very, very expensive. They're over $500,000 and it doesn't make sense to me because you can't make your money back because of the gross income is too low. So then why do people buy these properties? Because they're nice. because they're right on the ocean, and it's a way to fix your rent. So if you're somebody who lives here locally and you don't want to purchase something else and you just want to have something cheap, right? And there's some condos on Lee Drive that are only for around $100,000, then you can fix your rent so you're only going to pay X amount of dollars per month because you're just paying for the HOA and the lease fee, which is going to be very, very negligible. And so then you're set there, you get free Wi-Fi. It's all included in your HOA. You get Wi-Fi, water, trash, you get all of these amenities, you get a pool, all of that for the same price as if you were renting somebody's garage, right? So that's who buys a leasehold property. There are other people who also buy leasehold properties because of location. Like I mentioned, the ones that are right on the Union Drive, right on the water. I mean, it's the type of property you normally would not be able to afford. So another example of that would be, let's say you were someone considering farming, or you wanted a home in a particular location, like let's say Holualoa. Holualoa, you're looking for 5 to 10 acres with a nice home on it. You wanted to start an orchard. You're probably looking in low case scenario 4 million. Middle case scenario, you're probably looking into 5 million. But if you're looking at a leasehold property that has the same amount of acreage and a little house on it, it probably is around $1 million. And I'll have a lease that may be an ag lease if you're lucky. So then it's 50 to 75 years. Some of them are 100, but I haven't seen any of those. And so then when you think of the dollar, the lifestyle, and what you're doing, it may make more sense because then you're producing this farm. You have enough money set aside that you didn't spend on the real estate. Then now you can spend on equipment. You can spend on developing the actual area or land. You can spend that on hiring people and all of those things. So it just depends on your personal goals and your budget, really, what you're looking to do. Those types of properties are much harder to get into because you have to typically have a business plan together and things like that. But we can get really into it if that's something that you're interested in doing. Just give me a call. I'll explain the whole process to you and we can see if we can find you a property that fits what you're looking for. One of the misconceptions about leasehold properties as well is that they are cash only properties. That's not accurate, actually. The reason why a lot of real estate agents will say that to people who are coming in is because a lot of properties are under 35 years for a lease that's left. So if you find a property that has over 35 years left on the lease, you can actually get a loan for that property. Typically, to be on the safe side, you need to put at least 25% down. It'll be considered almost like an investor type loan where you have to show that this property is going to make income, and then the lender will look into that, or they'll ask for information from you, or they'll ask property managers or things like that. So basically, they're going to look at it more as an investment than like your primary residence. So the rates will be a little bit higher, but you can get a loan for a leasehold property. So if you're looking at a farm, you're looking at a house, or you're looking at a little condo that has until 2079, then that may be a good option for you as well. It's very inexpensive. You have to put very little down and it'll pay for itself. So overall, leasehold are a great option for people who are looking to fix their rent, make some money, for investors, or for people who are looking to live in a specific location but otherwise could not afford living in that location. Now I understand leasehold are not for everyone. So if you're looking for a property that's fee simple, then fee simple is what most people think of when they think of ownership or real estate ownership. Fee simple means that there are no lease, there's none of that. So if you're looking for a property right here on the Big Island, give me a call and I can give you some information. We can work together and see, what I can do for you and the type of properties that you're looking for. And typically we'll do a buyer consultation and I'll listen to, all the needs and the lifestyle that you're envisioning, and maybe I will suggest some areas that you may not have considered yet. Well, I hope this was helpful. Please check out the rest of the channel. I have a bunch of videos about the Big Island and Hawaii in general. Aloha, and I'll see you on the next one.